Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be taking a look at jobs,
Oh, wow.
but through a very unique lens, I think.
Okay.
We've got a children's book
Okay.
called Jobs. Very simple title.
Yeah.
And you've given us a bunch of notes on it as well, and it's
Yeah.
really got me thinking about all this stuff that's going on right now with AI and the future of work.
Yeah, it's amazing what seemingly simple sources can provide in terms of like jumping off points for these conversations.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the book itself, it kind of, categorizes jobs broadly. It's like inside, outside, city, countryside, all that.
Yeah.
But your notes really go a lot deeper, especially with your background in listeners' field.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, one of the first things that they talk about is how, like, flight attendants have uniforms so you can
Right.
spot them easily, like visual cues in the workplace.
Yeah.
But then you were talking about how specific point from listeners' notes and how that's going to change with, like, remote work. Are we going to lose all those visual cues?
That is a really interesting point. I think, the book being for kids focuses on the what of jobs,
Right.
but you're already thinking about the how and the where.
Yeah.
And those are things that are definitely rapidly changing.
Yeah. And not even just remote work, but all this
Yeah.
AI stuff coming in, too.
Exactly. And so even that simple idea of a uniform,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's assuming we're all in the same physical space,
Exactly.
which we're not always anymore.
Yeah, totally. And then it goes into specific settings. The book,
Yeah.
starting with the city chefs, store workers, tour guides, all this like hustle and bustle.
Yeah, like this whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that made me think about something you mentioned in your notes about informal economies in cities.
Oh, yeah.
The book being aimed at kids, it's probably not going to touch on
Yeah.
street vendors,
Yeah.
artists, all those people that are working outside the traditional systems. Like they're a huge part of the city's economic engine.
Yeah, a whole other layer of
Yeah.
complexity that the book doesn't really
Well,
address.
It presents this very idealized view, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense for the audience, but
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I think it's worth.
For kids, you don't want to get into all the
Yeah.
nitty-gritty.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then it moves into the countryside, farming, fishing, all very idyllic.
Right.
But then it mentions miners,
Oh yeah.
which I thought was interesting because it brings in this element of like danger
Yes.
and hidden work that
You can-
keeps society running.
Uh-huh.
And I immediately thought of your research on topic from listeners' notes,
Oh, interesting.
where the work is often invisible but essential.
Yeah.
And it made me wonder if even a children's book is like subtly teaching us which jobs are valued more.
It is a fascinating point. We could almost argue that this book unintentionally reinforces some societal biases about which jobs are seen as more desirable or prestigious.
Totally. And then we move from like the city and the country into like the makers.
The makers, yeah.
From handcrafted pottery to like
Right.
these giant factories churning out, who knows what it really captures, like the range of that.
Absolutely. What struck me there was your note about how you're feeling kind of anxious about AI and automation and how it's going to change things. And this book, while simple, it actually reflects a historical pattern that we see over and over again.
Yeah.
We went from handcrafted goods to mass production, and who knows what anxiety that caused back then.
Oh, for sure.
And so the question is, what skills are going to be valuable in this era of change?
Yeah. And it even mentions people who make the machines that go into everything.
Right.
Like, is AI going to be designing those machines soon?
Right.
What happens to the designers then?
Exactly. And I think this book is kind of accidentally preparing us to start thinking about these bigger questions.
Yeah.
It's not providing any answers, but it is showing us how work has always evolved and changed.
Yeah. This is just like the next iteration.
Yeah.
Okay. So from making things to helping people, there's this whole other
Yes.
category.
But it's very basic. Doctors, nurses, teachers.
It is, yeah.
You and your social work studies are already way past this definition of helping.
Well, right. And I think the book uses helping as this catch-all.
Yeah.
But, I'm learning about all the nuances within that direct service advocacy community organizing.
Yeah.
It's a whole spectrum that goes beyond just what's shown in the book.
Totally.
And then as AI comes into fields like healthcare and social work, even those definitions of helping are going to get more complex.
Yeah, it's all changing so fast.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up.
It really is. Yeah. It's like this children's book is a gateway to all these bigger conversations about the future of work.
It is. And it's so funny how it goes from those helping professions straight into jobs with animals.
Oh, yeah.
That's like the part that my niece always flips to
Yeah.
first when we read it together.
Oh, really?
It starts with vets, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But then, and this is where it gets kind of weird,
Okay.
there's a whole page on people who wash oil-covered pelicans.
I know. That one caught my eye, too. Like, what?
Such a specific, almost niche job, but it highlights all these unexpected ways we interact with animals in the environment.
It made me think of your work for the urban wildlife.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we don't just interact with animals in those idyllic countryside settings that the book shows.
Yeah.
Pigeons need help, too.
Exactly. This book focuses on these romanticized, often rural connections with animals.
Yeah.
But you, living in Listener City, are dealing with the reality of human-animal interaction in a very different way.
Yeah, and it's not always pretty.
Yeah.
But even the book touches on that a little bit.
Okay.
There's a brief mention of people who work in slaughterhouses.
Oh, right.
It's like this quick glimpse into the less glamorous side of
Yeah.
our relationship with animals.
It's almost like they had to include it, but they didn't want to dwell on it.
Right.
Which makes sense for a children's book, but it also raises the question, like, what jobs are we not talking about with kids?
That's a deep dive for another day.
And why?
The book then talks about guide dogs, which is very heartwarming. But it made me think of something, Elsie, in your notes.
Okay.
Emotional support animals.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a job for the animal?
That's where it gets tricky, right?
Yeah.
Because the book clearly defines job as something you get paid for.
Right.
Emotional support animals, therapy animals, they provide a service,
Yeah.
but not in that traditional sense.
Yeah.
It really challenges our definition of work.
This simple book is blowing my mind.
I know, right?
And then to add another layer, there's this section on the night shift.
Oh, yes.
Like, while we're sleeping, this whole other world is buzzing.
It's like a hidden workforce.
Yeah.
You know, doctors, nurses, obviously.
Right.
But then it mentions railway workers fixing tracks at night.
Oh, yeah.
Less glamorous,
Yeah.
but equally essential.
And that made me think of your research on topic from listeners' notes.
Okay, yeah.
Where the work is often dangerous and invisible.
Absolutely. It's like those night shift jobs are doubly hidden. This book gives us a glimpse into that world, but it doesn't really delve into the implications.
Right.
Like, what are the social and psychological impacts of working when most people are asleep?
Yeah. It mentions taxi drivers being busy at night,
Uh-huh.
but not the potential for burnout, loneliness, all those factors.
Right. We kind of take it for granted that things run smoothly 24/7.
Yeah.
But this book reminds us that there are people making that happen.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, are WE as a society doing enough to support these workers?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is.
This seemingly lighthearted children's book is getting heavy.
I know.
Okay, let's end on a lighter note.
Okay.
The last part of the book is all about jobs that are more like passions.
Oh, yeah.
Musicians, athletes, actors.
This is where the book, I think, really shines. It
Yeah.
captures that sense of joy and fulfillment
Yeah.
that comes from turning your passion into your livelihood.
It made me think of that quote that you always share. Find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Oh, yeah.
But is it really that simple?
I mean, that quote gets romanticized a lot.
Yeah.
But this book, in its simplicity, kind of gets at the core idea.
Yeah.
It's not saying that those jobs are easy,
Right.
just that the motivation is different.
Yeah, like the book shows some musicians playing on street corners for tips.
Exactly.
Not glamorous, but they're still doing what they love.
Right. It's not about fame or fortune. It's about finding that alignment between your work and your inner drive.
This is making me rethink my whole career path.
I know, right?
But seriously, you've done so much research on this. What are the key ingredients for turning passion into a successful career?
Well, talent obviously plays a role, but it's not enough on its own.
Okay.
It's that grit, that willingness to keep going even when it's tough, and being able to adapt. Like the musicians in this book, they're not all playing concert halls.
Right.
Sometimes it's a street corner. Sometimes it's teaching lessons.
Yeah.
That flexibility is key.
And luck, does that play a part?
Oh, absolutely.
Ah.
But here's the thing about luck. It's often about being prepared when opportunity knocks.
Okay.
Like if that street musician is amazing and someone influential walks by,
Yeah.
that's luck meeting preparedness.
This is giving me so much to think about.
I know it's a lot.
I feel like this children's book has unlocked a whole new level of career self-reflection.
That's the beauty of approaching things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to do with these deep dives.
Yeah.
Take your existing knowledge, add in this seemingly unrelated source, and see what sparks fly.
And boy, have there been sparks today.
So many sparks.
From hidden economies to the emotional labor of animals, from the shadows of the night shift to the pursuit of passion.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot.
And it all circles back to this idea that work is more than just a job.
Yeah.
It's how we define ourselves, contribute to society, and
Good.
find meaning in our lives.
But this book, Being for Kids, it doesn't touch on the anxieties of work.
That's true.
Like you mentioned in your notes that you're worried about AI taking over jobs.
Yeah.
Does this overly optimistic view do us a disservice?
Yeah, it's interesting how this children's book presents this very idealized vision of work,
Right.
while your notes bring in the very real anxieties of our time.
Well, I think it speaks to the different stages of life we're in.
Okay.
You know, the book is aimed at children who are just starting to imagine their place in the world. You, on the other hand, are grappling with the complexities of a rapidly changing work landscape.
It's like the book is planting seeds of possibility, and I'm over here worrying about the weeds.
Right. But maybe that's the point.
Okay.
To start with that sense of wonder and then layer in the reality as we grow.
And hopefully maintain some of that wonder.
Exactly.
Even as we face the challenges.
Yes. And what's fascinating to me is how this conversation has highlighted the evolving definition of work itself.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
The book sticks to the very traditional.
Yeah, you get paid, you do the thing.
Yeah.
But we've talked about informal economies, emotional support animals, even the unpaid labor of raising kids.
It's all work, but in different ways.
It is.
And with the rise of the gig economy, remote work, the blurring lines between our personal and professional lives,
Yeah. It's
all
evil.
definition of work is only going to get more fluid.
Yeah, messier.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to your concerns about AI.
Right.
This book, with its focus on human skills and craftsmanship, almost feels nostalgic now.
A little bit.
Like, are we romanticizing the past?
I think it's more about recognizing the value of those human skills, even in an age of automation.
Okay.
Creativity, critical thinking, empathy.
Yeah.
Those are the things that will set us apart from the machines.
So it's not about fearing AI, it's about figuring out how to work alongside it. How
Exactly.
to leverage its strengths while playing to our own.
Exactly. This book might not directly address AI,
Right.
but it reminds us that work has always been about adapting to new tools and technologies.
Right.
The printing press, the assembly line, the internet,
We've been through this before.
each brought disruption and opportunity.
So maybe this is just another chapter in that story.
Yeah. The key is to stay curious. Keep learning. Be open to new possibilities.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This Deep Dive has been a perfect example of that. Taking a children's book and extracting these incredibly insightful connections to your own life and anxieties.
It's been a wild ride.
It has.
From pelican washers to the future of AI.
That's right.
From the hustle of the city to the quiet heroism of the night shift.
Yes.
From the pursuit of passion to the evolving definition of work itself.
And through it all, I think we've come to a deeper appreciation for the complexity and the beauty of the world of work.
Absolutely. So to our listener, if you're feeling overwhelmed by the future of work, take a deep breath.
Yeah,
Remember the simple lessons from this children's book.
it's true.
Every job has a story. Work can be a source of joy. And the most important thing is to find something that aligns with your values and your passions.
Because ultimately, work is about more than just earning a paycheck. It's about making a contribution, finding meaning, leaving your mark on the world.
That's such a perfect note to end on.
Ah,
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of jobs.
it's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
And remember, the exploration doesn't end here.
Keep asking questions.
Keep learning and keep discovering the amazing world of work that surrounds us, the